Gotta get this stuff done, don't we? Somebody sent me an email and asked about the quizzes and things in the syllabus. I mean, in the syllabus in my lab, and I want you guys to do everything in my lab, everything. I want you to get your money's worth. And then at the end, I want you to tell me what you think of my lab, whether or not it's something that was worthwhile. Is it, if it's so bad, maybe I should give all of you a 50% refund. What would that be? 1, 2, 3, 4.
That would be a lot. That would be a lot.
That would add up fast, wouldn't it? But since I'm the one who insisted on it, maybe I should have to pay for it if it's really bad. But haven't you found it useful?
I think it's really good if you stay on top of it. If you get behind, though, it's very, very overwhelming. But I like the instant feedback of it because you can see what you got wrong and why.
Mm-hmm. And it's a good learning tool. And if it is hard because you're kind of on your own, you know, you're going to find something out when you take classes from me and you're an education major. When you become a teacher, there's nobody looking over your shoulder telling you to go to work and get things done. You have to become a self-directed individual to be a successful teacher. And if you go all the way through a teacher education program and you say, I just can't get it together, you probably will last for about a year, and then you'll have to go get a regular job that's not as much fun, where people just tell you what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And you don't have to spend all that time making yourself get ready for it and planning ahead, because that's just what teaching involves if you're going to do it right. So part of my thinking is, one of my objectives is that for teachers, I want you to learn something about yourself in terms of planning and time management and that kind of thing. And it is true, if you get to the end and you kind of procrastinated, then you say, I might lose a little bit of sleep, but I know how to whip through this stuff real fast and get it done. Because what I'll be looking at when I'm looking at my lab is I'm looking to see, have you done all these things? I'm not looking, you know, I like it when you go back and do things to where you've got a passing grade on it, but I want to see that you've at least done it and not have a lot of blanks in your My Lab report. Okay, I'm on page 283, talking about routine classroom behavior problems. And 283 says, give them, when someone's being disruptive, give them a choice. You can either comply, you can either do this or suffer the consequences of not doing it. And you present them with that choice. But what will happen? Will there be occasions when you will have students who will say, I choose to take the consequences? One student actually said to me, if I don't comply with your directive, Mr. Bonine, what will be the consequences? Now, you know what he's asking? How high a price do I have to pay if I decide to disobey? And willful disobedience is a big ticket deal with me. So have you any idea what I do? If you decide in advance that you don't want to comply and you're going to be willfully disobedient, for you, I will have a special consequence that's more serious than anybody else. And I will tell you that right up front. And guess what that guy will say to me? Mr. Bonine, have you ever heard this in life anywhere? That's not fair. Right? I'm not treating everybody alike. And guess what I will say to this little chipmunk?
Life's not fair.
Life's not fair. I'm trying to teach you how to live in a world of work. It's not going to be fair. And when he gets out of school and gets a job, if he's always looking to see how he can break the rules, will his supervisors have a higher standard for him or a more serious consequence for him than they would for somebody else. So I'm just trying to teach him how to live in the world of work. So I'm going to give him a choice. You can either comply, and if he just says, "I'd like to know what the consequence is," now sometimes I will say, "I haven't decided that yet, but since you asked the question, I'll make sure the consequence for you is more severe than it would be normally." Why? Because you seem to be looking for ways to see if you want to pay the price to break the rule, and I don't like that approach to life. I want people in here who want to do what they're told and obey the rules and follow them and fit in. Consequences, timeout, missed recess, and by the way, they don't have to stay in the room to miss recess. They can be standing outside if you're the supervisor and spending their time standing right by you. You can even take a chair out there and let them sit in the chair and turn the chair so their back is to all the kids who are playing. So all they can do is hear what's going on and they can't see it. You can make time out a rather painful experience if you think of creative ways to do it. Miss a privilege. Now, in order to miss a privilege, that means I'm going to have some privileges for class, right? So if I had someone in here who was just always giving me grief, here's what you would see happening. I would decide to bring to class someday another bag of M&Ms or some peach applesauce. And I would pass it out to everybody except the one person who's been giving me grief all the time. Anybody feeling bad about this thing yet? You can either feel uncomfortable and be the bad guy, or you can let the bad guy take charge of your class and make you feel uncomfortable all the time. And I'll pass out the peach applesauce, and I'll pass him up, and what's the first thing you'll hear out of that little chipmunk's mouth? Hey, what about mine? I'm going, you want some peach applesauce? Go buy some.
Oh.
I only give applesauce to people who make my life pleasant, and you don't. Now, am I announcing something to the class that the rest of them didn't know already? No. And what are the rest of them registering? Whoa. He means business with this stuff. And by the way, don't be surprised if the little squirrel who's giving me grief decides that he likes peach applesauce so much that I could buy it more often and bring it in, and I start giving him some. And he might even say to me after class when nobody else is around, because he's doing a lot of this for his friends to impress them, he might say, "So if I quit goofing off in your class, will you start giving me peach applesauce?" I said, "I sure will." I mean, I look at these cards I keep here, and if I don't see your name showing up very often, you don't have to be perfect. Nobody's perfect. But if you work harder at trying to cooperate and do what I want and quit giving me grief, next time I pass out peach applesauce, you'll be on the receiving end. And I would probably bring it sooner then. So when in other words, you know how it says catch people doing good things? I want to reward him for doing the right thing, because what I want more than anything else is I don't want to come to school and nail this guy for stuff. I want him to learn to change his behavior. I want him to change the way he lives. Stay after school and spend time with me, talking about what's going on here. Sit with me in the cafeteria. They didn't put that on their list, but I'd add that. Sit with me in the cafeteria at my table where nobody else wants to sit. You got to get a tough hide to be working with middle school and high school kids. Because if they find out they can make you feel bad and hurt your feelings, they'll just tromp all over it. Especially some of the kids who've had their feelings hurt and they don't think anybody cares. Calling parents. And I know some people say it doesn't do any good. I say it always does good to call parents. Always does good. And just remember, understand the parents are going to be emotional about this. They're going to have strong feelings about their children. So the best thing to do is take a positive approach, soft answers, turn away wrath. I still remember the lady called me, and I was holding the phone clear out here, and I could hear every word she said. She was just going on and on about what happened in school and how mad she was about what happened. And then I just kept listening, and I had a piece of paper writing down notes. And she said, "Are you still there?" I said, "Yes, ma'am, I am. I'm just writing." She said, "Well, I didn't hear you." I said, "Well, I'm writing down notes so I can go to school tomorrow and check out what happened and follow this up and do something about it." She said, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" I said, "Well, I'm going to collect all the information. I've got your perspective on it. I'm going to talk to your son tomorrow and get his perspective on it. I'm going to talk to the other teachers. I'm going to collect a whole bunch of information before I make a decision." And then she says, "Well, thank you for doing that." And all of a sudden her tones changed. And I said, "And I will do something about it. And whatever I decide to do about it, I'll call you back and let you know. Will that work for you?" She said, "That will work for me." And then she said, "And thank you." And then she said, "And I'm sorry I yelled at you." And here's what I said. Okay, here's what I said. "I understand. This is your child. This is your flesh and blood. If my flesh and blood does something, I'm going to get a little riled up too. That's because you love them so much and care for them. Can I put a positive spin on about anything if I really want to? And why wouldn't I do that? Because what does putting a positive spin on it do with my relationship to the parent? If you don't know, I'll tell you. When the parent hangs up and the child's complaining about me, that parent says, "Don't you talk to me about Mr. Bonine. I talked to him on the phone. And he's a nice guy." And why do they say that? Because that's the impression I gave on the phone, and they will tell their son to just, "You need to buckle down and do what he says." And all of a sudden, I've got them on my side, instead of calling them up and saying, "You need to do something about this brat you brought into the world." I mean, it's like, what are people thinking? That's why I don't like to sit in the teacher's room and eat lunch and listen to all the teachers talk about how far the nut falls from the tree. Have you heard that anywhere? And what I really want to say to some of those teachers is, I have your children in class, and I would notice that the nut doesn't fall very far from the tree. But I can't say that out of kindness to them, so I just don't go to, I just eat in the cafeteria with the kids, so I'm away from that, and I can stay away from all that kind of stuff. I just don't think it's healthy. And even one place in the book, if we haven't come to it yet, we'll come to it, but if we covered it and I just skipped over because I was in such a hurry, I'm going to mention it again, and that is where this one teacher said, "I talked to your parents," or no, "I talked to the other teachers about your behavior." I never do that. I don't want anybody, somebody comes and says, "So you've got Johnny Smartmouth in your class?" I understand. I'm going, "Who?" They go, "Well, that's my nickname for him. You want to know his real name?" I go, "Nope, don't want to hear it." I would rather that child be able to make his own first impression on me without you giving me some information that might not be accurate. "Well, I'm just telling you, he'll be Johnny Smartmouth." And I'm saying, well, maybe he was Johnny Smartmouth with you, but he might not be that way with me. And I want to give, and when he comes to class, don't be surprised if this little chipmunk says, "So, did Mr. doesn't like me say anything to you about me being in your class?" I'm going, "No, he didn't tell me a thing about you. He didn't say anything about somebody named Johnny Smartmouth." I'm going, "Oh yeah, but I don't have any Johnny Smartmouth in my class. Right here on my roster, there is no Johnny Smartmouth." And he goes, "That's me." And I go, "No way, that's not you." I mean, I'm just looking at you, and I just don't see that. And once that child who has a bad reputation and the teachers pass it along, when he finds out that you don't care what other teachers say, you're going to let him make his own track record in your class, he will behave differently in your class because you might be, in his mind, the first teacher who ever gave him a break. And, okay, you want to know one of the reasons why I give kids a break like that? Hey, I had an older brother, a year and a half older than I am, who went to school and gave all the teachers grief. His name was Richard Bonine. my older brother. So I go to the same high school, and my name is Tommy Bonine. There's no, I mean, you don't get those two confused, right? Then how come when I went to class and they said, Tommy Bonine? And they looked at me like I was my older brother. And I didn't like my older brother any more than they did. He was just mean. I'm telling you, he was just mean to me and everybody else. And are you ready for this? I finally sat in a class at the end of the day and I said, well, if these people think I'm mean like my brother, I guess
Might as well.
I might as well deliver the goods. Is that sad? So those teachers brought it on themselves. You say, no, you were just looking for an excuse. No, I wasn't. I was just resentful that they lumped me in with my brother and gave me grief like they, and thought I'm going to do the same thing he did. So I'm just telling you, as a teacher, I don't care if they have the same last name, if they come from the same family, if they're twins. Give them the privilege to chart their own course in your class. Okay. Consequences for not complying with the teacher's request should be mildly unpleasant. I'm not going to tear their arm off for throwing paper wads so they can't throw any more paper wads. How's this for being mildly unpleasant? I do not like paper wads being thrown around in my classroom. So the kid who throws paper wads gets to stay after class and pick them all up. I didn't throw them all. Doesn't matter. You're the one I caught throwing them. You pick them all up. Next time I'll catch somebody else. By the way, we had a rule in our school, no gum chewing. So you know what kids do to sneak about gum? Now see, and I don't care. It never personally bothered me to see people chewing gum. That does not bother me. But it did some teachers, so we had a rule at our school, no gum chewing. So what do kids do to hide their gum chewing? They stick that disgusting stuff on the bottom of tables.
That's disgusting.
But see, I'm saying, I don't think they would do that if there wasn't a rule against chewing gum. But since we have a rule and you broke it, guess what? Guess what, Carissa? Guess what? Here's a putty knife. She's chewing gum today, by the way. So here's a putty knife. And guess what you get to do? Turn the tables up on edge. I'll put them on edge and you get to scrape the gum off. And that used to make gum chewers almost want to vomit. But they sure, see, I call that mild punishment. But it broke them of chewing gum in my class. And it was like, and it wasn't a big deal to me. It wasn't a big moral issue with me. It was just the school has a rule, so don't do it. Just don't do it. Just learn to follow the rules. But that's a dumb rule. Well, so even if I agreed with you, who cares? It's a rule. We just live with it. That's just life. You're going to go through life having rules thrown at you like that. So, mildly unpleasant. We might have different definitions of what's mild. Short in duration. And applied as soon as possible. So probably it'd be good if I just said, hey, here's the little putty knife. Before you leave, pop off 3 pieces of gum off the bottom of these tables. Eventually, I'll have this whole room cleaned up. So there won't be any more gum on the bottom of the tables. Mildly unpleasant, short in duration, and applied as close to the offense as possible. Certainty, this is all on page 283. Certainty is far more important than severity. The fact that they know it's going to happen. Because if I say this is the rule and these are the consequences, then I'm going to apply the consequences. And that's why I write things down, because I forget stuff. And they interpret my forgetfulness as he doesn't care. And I do care, I just forgot. See, I'm a very positive person, believe it or not. I have a positive outlook on life, and I don't like to remember negative stuff. So when it happens, if I don't write it down, I'll forget it. And just like former students who used to give me grief, they say, Mr. Bonine, do you remember having me in class? And I said, yes, I do. And they said, Oh, you do? And I said, yes. I said, what do I remember about you? And I would tell them some of the things I remembered, and it's always positive stuff. And they said, well, what about when I was doing this? I said, I don't remember that. They go, you don't remember that? I'm going, no. All I have are happy memories of you. Oh, they go, oh, that's so nice. I mean, it just is. That's just part of my personality. I just don't remember that other stuff. If you remember the other stuff, then at least write down some good stuff. If you remember negative stuff all the time, then start making a list of positive stuff. So you can look at that and be a little encouraged now and then. Mild but certain consequences communicate that the behavior is unacceptable and that the teacher cares about the student. If I didn't care about you, I would just let everything go. But I care about you, and I care about the students in this classroom. Vague or empty threats are worse than useless. What's an empty threat? It's saying I'm going to do something when I'm not going to do it. So if you say you're going to do something, do it. Uncertainty about consequences can invite power struggles. So, Mr. Bonine, just checking. If I come in your class and start throwing spit wads, what will I do? I said, let's see. I'll make you pick up all the spit wads in the class. He said, what if there aren't any in here? I said, you know what? Then maybe during lunch, instead of eating lunch, I'll have you go to all the classrooms and volunteer to pick up spit wads for everybody else. Oh, he goes, oh, you would do that? Now, I'm asking myself, would I really do that? Yes, I would do that. Guess what he decides? He'll check his spit wadding at the door when he comes in my room and save it for other people's classes.
How generous.
But spit wads just gross me out. Gum chewing, it's not a problem. Throwing spit wads, get out of here. That's right. That's disgusting. And see, they might as well know who I am and where I come from and how to relate to me, because that's what I'm going to expect. I want this classroom to be a learning environment, and I'm part of it. They're part of it. We'll have to learn to get along. And there's some things that I just don't, and just don't do it. Don't do it. Bothers me. And they say, well, that's why I do it, because it bothers you. I said, well, guess what? People who bother me are going to suffer some serious consequences. Often, after a consequence, avoid referring to it. Don't go back and bring it up again and again. Students deserve a fresh start. So after a consequence, you just move on like it never happened. So that means the next time he does it, don't go saying, there you go again. Just make a note that this is the second time he's done it, and then maybe you're going to up the consequence a little bit. But just don't keep bringing the past up. So what are some serious behavior problems? What are you going to do if two kids get in a fight in your room?
I mean,
depends how serious the fight. If they're just like yelling, then I'd say, hey guys, let's not yell anymore.
Okay, that's now, and that's not considered fighting. It's once they start physically hurting one another.
Well, if they're hurting one another, then they need to be separated and possibly sent to the principal's office.
I think in some schools the policy is if you get in a fight, you are automatically suspended from school.
That's a lot of schools.
So, why do you think they have such a strict rule?
So they can't be tolerated.
Because that's something we don't tolerate. That's something we don't tolerate. He also mentioned stealing as a serious behavior problem. I am so glad he put that in his book. Because I think there's a lot of people who think, I don't want my kid fighting, but it doesn't hurt if he steals something once in a while. I don't understand how our culture got to the place to where stealing is so understandable and commonplace. my solution for stealing was I looked at the Bible to see if I could find something in the Bible that talks about stealing. Anyone think of Bible verses that talk about stealing? Him that stole, let him steal no more. So there was a culture where people were stealing. In the Old Testament, if you stole something,
You got your hand cut off.
yeah, well, I can't do that. Might not be a bad idea, but I can't do that. So I read in the Old Testament where you had to pay back 7 times what you stole. So if you steal someone's pencil, guess what you have to bring that person as a gift next week? 7 pencils. So if you stole somebody's Frito at lunch when they weren't looking, then guess what you have to bring them next week? A little bag of Fritos. I don't have any money. Well, I know where you can earn some. Where? Have your parents bring you to my house and I'll pay you for raking leaves in my backyard. And then the money you earn, we'll go together to the store and buy some Fritos so you can wrap it up and give it to, in fact, I'll take it to school and say, you just bought this for him, and I'll give it to him at school next week. And I'm here to tell you, I've worked with kids. Okay, I had a high school kid tell me that he used to steal a lot, and he taught his little brother how to do it in grade school, and now his little brother was going bonkers with it. And I took this guy and his little brother and put them on, people used to call it one of Dr. Bonine's or one of Mr. Bonine's programs. I'd put them on a program where they started doing things to earn money and to pay back what they'd stolen and go to the person they stole from and start making restitution. Somehow that seems to, pull the callus off of your conscience that has been hardened. Because the first time you steal something, you're scared to death. And the second time, it doesn't feel as bad. It's the same with lying and all that kind of stuff that God talks about. So I'm trying to resensitize their conscience. And I look at the scriptures and look for places in there where it gives me some directives as what to do. Destruction of property. Well, if you break it, you pay for it. Gross disrespect. What will happen in the working world if you're grossly disrespectful to your boss?
You get fired.
You get fired. So I'm thinking that there ought to be suspensions for that. Page 284. The most common reinforcer for classroom misbehavior is attention. From the teacher as well as from peers. Now, see, I would have said attention from their peers because they're wanting to entertain their friends. And if somebody does something, if someone misbehaves and everybody laughs, I say, that wasn't funny. And I will actually say to them, you people sound like a TV program with all that canned laughter. You understand you know what canned laughter is? Okay, the next time you watch a TV program where there's laughter in the background,
It's fake.
it's probably 80% of that is canned laughter. Laughter is contagious. So I promise you, if you just sit there and think about, did what he just say, was it really funny? The answer is no. It wasn't funny. It was rude, crude, uncouth. And just watch it, then say, so why are they laughing? Because of the canned laughter background. That's contagious. And so I start talking to kids, don't laugh at stuff that isn't really funny. And misbehavior is not funny. They go, ah. And you'll hear them say, I hadn't thought of that. Because a lot of the cartoons they watch, people are misbehaving and it's funny. Misbehavior is considered a form of entertainment, and so some people do it to get attention. So you just need to address that. Say, so just don't be laughing about it. It's not funny. And somebody pipes up, well, Mr. Bonine, I think it's funny. I'm going, oh, you do? Great. And what do? I get my little sheet of paper. And I write down. Now, who was it thought that was funny? Oh. They say, what do you write down? I write down, John thinks that being disrespectful is funny. You understand? I bet his mother would like to have a conversation about that one. Ah. Whoa. I don't want to be in Mr. Bonard's class. No, what you mean is you don't want to bring your disrespect. You follow me? You don't want to bring your misbehavior to my class. You come in my class and leave all that stuff at home, and we'll have a great time. But what about attention from the teacher? You mean some people are misbehaving because they actually want my attention? Hey, you know what? I know how to avoid that one. I'm going to give them my attention before they misbehave. You understand what I'm saying? If I sense that they're doing this just because they need some attention from a significant adult, I'm going to become a significant adult in their life. So they get the attention without misbehaving. When students misbehave to gain your attention, pay attention to them when they're behaving and ignore them when they're misbehaving. When ignoring the behavior is impossible, impose timeout in a quiet corner. Either one of these corners. I might have 2 timeout desks in here, one in each corner facing the wall. And now that one, it would be easy to either face it looking outside or face it looking at the door to that bathroom. If this timeout chair is punishment or a consequence, which way would you set the desk? Facing the window looking outside or looking at the door to that bathroom? Looking at the door. This is not to be a pleasant place to look outside and entertain yourself watching all the wind blow through the grass and stuff. And little critters running out there. Clowning and defiance are often done for peer attention. And most clowning behavior is not that funny. You'll do your kids a service if you teach them that laughter doeth good like a medicine, but not laughter, not laughing at evil or laughing at that which is wrong. And just help them understand that. Good-hearted, entertaining laughter. I think where I got my first taste of this was when I became a teacher. They would have parent-teacher meetings, and they needed some teacher to volunteer. Instead of sitting in the parent-teacher meeting, they needed someone who would volunteer to supervise the children, and I volunteered to do that because I'd rather hang out with the kids anyway. So I had all the little kids in a room, and they always had a movie to show the little kids. And this was before I even had children in school. So I'm sitting in the back of the room supervising these kids watching this movie. And it's a movie where there's some cartoon characters, you know, whacking on each other with hammers and bats and stuff, and knocking each other around. And I'm just sitting there watching this, and I'm thinking, it isn't that funny. But the kids are just laughing their heads off. And then there's 3 little kids in the back sitting here just looking at it like, just like, you know, eyes big, wide. And I looked at them and I said, hey, do you guys have a TV at home? They said, no. And that's, I think, when I probably made a decision. I did not want my children watching TV if it turns you into someone who laughs at violence, even if it's animated in a cartoon. So I just said, this is not healthy. And so you're going to have to spend some time with your students teaching them what's really funny and what isn't. And there's a lot of things that we laugh at in our world that aren't really funny. Use group contingencies and rewarding the class on the basis of everyone having good behavior to remove peer support for misbehavior. Do what? Okay, it's about time for recess, and as soon as everybody gets the stuff off of their desk and put away inside and gets their work finished up and their everything and their coat on, we can go out to recess. And here's some guy goofing around, and we can't go out to recess till everybody's doing this. You follow what happens? We've got something good going to happen, but everybody has to be doing the right thing to get there. And all of a sudden, then, instead of this clown being entertaining, the group is tired of his clowning around because he's taken away time for something that's more valuable than his clowning to them. You understand what he's talking about doing here? It's a group contingency. I'm rewarding the class on the basis of everyone behaving in a certain way. I mean, watch what I could do. I could bring little miniature Hershey bars in here and say, I have a Hershey bar by each person's name. And at the end of the class period, I'm going to give these out if everybody behaves for the whole class time. And if one person misbehaves, then I put all the little candy bars away and nobody gets them. I know what you goody two-shoes people are thinking. That's not fair. And what's my response, Annalie? Life's not fair. I'm usually, now see, and if you came to me after class and said, why do you do that, Mr. Bowman? I'd say, well, I'm using an educational technique called group contingencies. I've actually explained to students who thought it wasn't fair why I'm doing that. Because instead of this class clown entertaining everybody, I want him to start to feel the peer pressure to do the right thing. Well, do you think it'll work? I don't know. Let's try it and see what happens. And then, since Annalie thought it wasn't fair, at least you said that, she stayed after class to talk to me about it. I said, you know what, Annalie? Who knows? You might be a teacher someday. That just makes me feel so good to think that you might be a teacher because you wonder about this kind of stuff. Hey, where did I put those Hershey bars? And I just give her one when she leaves. And then somebody says, I understand after class you gave Annalie a Hershey bar. I go, so? They go, that's not fair. And what do I say? Life's not fair. And then I'll watch for an occasion to reward them when it wasn't fair. But I just gave them something just out of the, I like to use this phrase, the goodness of my heart, but there isn't very much there. So it's kind of a misnomer. Page 285. Students often misbehave simply to escape from unpleasant activities. You mean to say they're going to misbehave because they want to get out of my math class? Yep. So maybe I need to figure out a way to keep them here. I one time said to a little guy, I said, I think I have figured out what to do to make you pay attention in math class. He said, what? I said, I'm going to ask your mom, because she's a stay-at-home mom, and I'm going to ask your mom if she'll come to school and sit with you. He goes, his eyes got, he goes, what? I said, I'm just saying, I'm trying to figure out a way to get you to pay attention in class and do your math work. I know you don't like it, but I'm trying to come up with something, and I'm thinking that I'm going to call your mom and ask her to come and sit in class and just supervise you. And he goes, Mr. Bullen, before you do that, could you give me a chance to kind of try to do better on my own? I said, you think you can do better? He goes, yes, I think I can. I said, hey, I'll give you a week. Let's see what happens. What do you think happened?
Not better.
The consequences that I was thinking about using, in his mind, were so unpleasant that he would rather do math than have his mother sit with him in class. Well, finally, I got this guy doing math. And the thing is, and I know this, if I can get him doing some math, I can get him to start to get over some of his distaste for math. I know I haven't had as much time with you as I'd like to have, but I'm thinking I could take a whole bunch of you people who don't care for math, and if I worked with you long enough, we could start enjoying it a little bit. Okay. Page 285. Actively involving students in lessons can head off misbehavior that results from boredom. What do you mean? Misbehavior that results from boredom. If I'm just bored and I'm looking for something to do, I wonder what I could do. Tear a corner off a piece of paper and roll it up into a little ball and flip it across the room with somebody. You understand? Inappropriate. I don't want that kind of behavior. Well, but so keep them busy. Keep them busy. And keep an eye on them. I mean, if we're supposed to be working on a handout I gave them and it's got a corner on it they could tear off, I mean, if the student says, Mr. Bonine, what if I turn in this handout with a corner torn off on it? Is that okay? Now, why do you think he's asking that? Because he's planning to make a spitwad, people. No, it's not okay. And then if he takes, okay, so he finds something else to make it out of, and what is he going to do before he flicks it? He's going to look at me. So what am I doing constantly? I'm just like an air traffic controller at the airport. I'm just monitoring all the eyes in the room. And when his eyes look at me, I just go, he goes, what? Go, get to work, get to work. And then they start thinking you're a mind reader. It's so funny. You can prevent frustration by using material that ensures a high success rate. I want my students to be successful because the more successful they are, the harder they'll work at something, the more it'll increase their motivation, and the fewer behavior problems we'll have. Using an applied behavior analysis program, whoa, boy, that gets complicated, doesn't it? Oh, wait a minute. Maybe every now and then I've got such a complicated student, I need to use this stuff. And there's 6 steps in using this stuff. I know it gets a little complicated in the book, but think about it. Here's all you do. You identify the target behavior. You establish a baseline for how often that behavior occurs. I had a teacher come to me when I was a principal, and she said, Mr. Bonine, I want you to get these 2 boys out of my art class. I said, because? She said, because they are always, and she told me what they were doing. I don't remember what it was she said, but when she said they're always doing that, what's your immediate response?
Well, I've seen them or not.
Yeah, that's what you always see them doing. So I said, okay, write down what it is they're doing on a piece of paper that bothers you, and put both of their names on the piece of paper. And every time they do it, just put a mark by their name. And she said, I don't want to do that. I said, so do you want them to keep doing what they're doing in class? She said, no. I said, okay, just take those 2 boys and make an exception of them and say, and tell them you're doing this so you can document their misbehavior so Mr. Bonine has a reason to take you out of my class. Do you have any idea what happened when she walked in with her sheet of paper with the behavior and the 2 names on it, and every time they start doing something, she started putting marks by their name? Do you have any idea what happened? Would you like to guess?
They quit doing it.
They quit misbehaving. And after school, I said, so how'd it go today? She goes, I can't believe it. I said, what? She said, all of a sudden, I start writing down what they're doing and counting how many times they did it, and they quit doing it. I said, and then I looked at her, and I said, it's because they like you. And she goes, how could they like me? They've made my art class miserable. And why were they misbehaving? Because she was allowing it till she got frustrated and then wanted to yell at them. And I'm just telling you, this stuff has some application here. And we looked for a baseline, and just by making the baseline, it already changed things. And then choose a reinforcer and a criterion for reinforcement. What behavior do I want? And then I reinforce that behavior. Choose a punisher for the behavior I don't want. Compare the behavior during the implementation of your program with your baseline. Has the behavior diminished? Has the inappropriate behavior diminished and the desired behavior increased? Yes. but it's not where I want it to be yet. Okay, but we're making progress. Do you follow that? This little technique lets you show how you're making progress. And then when the program is working, you basically abandon the program to see if it's just going to maintain itself. And if it doesn't, then you bring it back in again. Let's talk about some examples. Sharpening pencils in your class. Have any of you ever been in a classroom where the teacher's teaching and all of a sudden some kid walks over to the pencil sharpener and goes, does that bother anyone in this room? 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3 of us are bothered by it. The rest of you don't care. Fine, if you don't care, let them go ahead and do it. For those of us who don't like people sharpening pencils, we get a baseline. How often is this happening in my classroom? Okay, now see, for me, once is too much. So it's like, whoa, I just discovered something I need to do something about. So what do? I know one teacher who said, bring 2 sharpened pencils to math class. Then if one breaks, then you've got another one. What if the second one breaks? Then he goes to the pencil sharpener and cranks it twice to sharpen them both. Oh, I think what we need in this room is a box of pencils that are already sharpened. And the person who likes to run the sharpener, he can take all the ones that have been turned in at the end of the day and sharpen them, and the rest, and put them back in the box, and then everybody else just has a place to go trade out pencils. And you trade out pencils. You put your pencil in there and take one out to sharpen and get back to work. Page 286, guidelines for effective punishment. Use punishment sparingly. Now see, I'm talking a lot about punishment now and negative consequences, undesirable consequences, because that's the topic. And I'm talking about when I use it, but I didn't use it all the time. I didn't have to. If you use it sparingly, then when you use it, it makes a bigger impression. Make it clear to the child why he is being punished. What's wrong with me doing whatever? I said, there wouldn't be anything wrong with it if you were out on the playground. But in my class, I don't want people doing that. You come to my class to work, and the work we do in this class is math, since I'm a math teacher. And you could say if you're teaching everything, and the work we do is schoolwork. And I want you doing schoolwork in here, not drawing pictures or making airplanes or whatever. What's wrong with making airplanes and flying them? Isn't that scientific? It would be if you were home, out in the yard, or in your house, or in the garage, but that's not appropriate here. And you just have to say, I explained to them, that's why you're going to suffer the consequences. Provide an alternative, positive reinforcer. If you would quit doing that and do this, you would be rewarded for it. Doesn't the Bible in the Old Testament say, I set before you a blessing and a curse? Mm-hmm. A blessing if you obey, and a curse if you disobey. I try to go to the Bible to extract stuff that I can use when I'm talking to kids about behavior and misbehavior, because I want them to get the impression that some of the things they do, God doesn't approve of. In fact, that stuff about laughter we were talking about, I said, do you think God thinks that's funny? And they go, I don't think God thinks anything's funny. I think I can find some places in the Bible where it reads that God laughed at things. Reinforce desired behaviors. No physical punishment. It's not allowed anymore. Never punish somebody when you're angry. Punish when the behavior starts rather than when it ends. Don't let it go too far. If 2 people are getting loud and verbal with each other, don't wait till they start pushing each other to intervene. Say, wait a minute. That's no way to talk to each other. Some guy says, I would like to just put his lights out. I'm going, yeah, but if you did that, you would get suspended from school. So let's avoid going there. Page 287, timeout is an effective punisher. A corner of the room. He said the hallway, I scratched that off. The office depends on the principal. Some principals don't want you sending kids to the office. I scratched that off. Another teacher's classroom. I just never had the courage to take someone who was misbehaving and ask someone else to watch him. You understand? It just didn't. So it's like, so far all I have is the corner of the room, out of view of classmates, and sit and watch the timer, a 3 or 5 minute turnover sand timer. So that's what I'm going to use. You say, well, it doesn't seem to be working. Well, then maybe I need to tell this guy that, you know, if he sits in the corner and thinks about what he's doing, and while the sand's running through the thing, all he's thinking about is what's he going to do next, I'm thinking it's time for me to call your parents and have a talk about whether or not you should even be in my classroom. And I don't know if you ever heard me say this, but one time I talked to a student about, I think I need to maybe call your father and talk to him about whether or not you need to be in this school. And he looked at me and he said, you know who my father is? I said, no, who's your father? He said, you know who my father is. He's the chairman of the school board. And I looked at him and said, what does it have to do with anything? And he looked me right in the eye and he said, I can get you fired. And Cherish, I looked him right in the eye and I said, I'll tell you what, you try to get me fired, I'll try to get you kicked out of school, we'll see who wins. And he blinked. And I called his father that night and told him about the conversation we had. And I said, so what do you think we ought to do about this? Should I go look for another job? Should you find another school for your son? Or should we try to make this thing work? And he said, thank you for calling, Mr. Monine. Now, why did he thank me for calling?
Because a lot of teachers probably never had the nerve to call him because of who he was.
Isn't that sad that this little turkey had strutted around school and got away with that with other people? You say, well, what if you get fired? You know what?
There are other schools will hire.
That's exactly right, Annalie. And when I go to another school and apply for a job, they say, why'd you get fired? I said, oh, the chairman of the board and his son and I had a run-in. And so he sided with his son and they fired me. And I said, so be it. I mean, it's just not the end of the world. And the father thanked me, and he had a talk with his son. And when I told the other teachers what the father said, some of them who had kind of backed down were thinking, boy, I sure put myself in a spot, didn't I? I mean, and here's what I'm thinking. From a biblical perspective, did I do the right thing? Now, my wife would say, well, you don't have to tell him. You try to get me fired, and I'll try to get you kicked out of school, and we'll see who wins. I said, I know, but you see, I was one of those little turkeys when I was in school, and sometimes you just have to talk turkey to a turkey. And my wife doesn't understand that because she couldn't be a turkey if she wanted to.
She's a swan.
That's exactly right. She is a swan. It's amazing. So it's just like, hey, we're going to deal with this. So if my timeout thing isn't working, my next move is to say, we're going to talk to the parents about this. And by the way, I did one time have a parent come in because this mother said, well, from what my son says, you're very, very strict in class. And I said, and you know what? I believe your son is right. I am very strict. By comparison to, I mean, think about it. Are there homes out there who would look at the way I run my classroom and say, that's very strict? Yes, they would. So I'm just going to be agreeable. I'm not going to argue with them. And I'll say, why don't you come to school and sit in the classroom and watch what goes on? And she said, what? I said, yeah, just come and sit in the corner. And then after class, talk to me about where you think I'm being too strict. And she said, what would my son think of that? I said, I wouldn't even tell him. See, what would my son think of that? Who cares what my son thinks of that? You know, who's in charge of this household? You or this son? And I said, I wouldn't even tell him. Just say, this is just between us. You're just wanting to come and check out to see if I'm as bad as he says I am. And if so, you'll make some suggestions on how I can be a better classroom teacher. So she shows up. What do you think little Charlie Chickenhearted did right then? Okay, now he has a choice, doesn't he? My mom's sitting in the corner watching. I can either strut around and show off in front of my friends and get plucked when I get home, or I can toe the line and look like some kind of little wimp to all my friends. He's a loser any way he goes. You understand? This guy is between a rock and a hard spot. And after his mother, after class, she said, I don't think you're too strict. I said, great. Tell your son that when you get home. And the next day at school, he said, Mr. Bonai, why'd you invite my mother to class? I said, why not? Let her come in here and see what goes on. And he said, are you ever going to do that again? I said, I don't know. Am I going to have to do that again because of the way you misbehave in here? He goes, I won't do that stuff anymore, Mr. Bodine. I said, thanks a lot. Let's just learn to get along here. You know, let's have a happy little family. I also think that while they're over there watching the timer, it doesn't hurt. Now, some people don't like this, but I put down here, it doesn't hurt to have them write on a sheet of paper. I will not sharpen pencils in class anymore. I will exchange my pencils from the pencil box. I will not sharpen pencils in class anymore. I don't think it hurts to write down what I will not do and what I'm going to do instead of that. And just because when they're writing it down, they're kind of ingraining it in their minds. And when the sand runs out, you can quit writing and turn your little paper into me. I mean, that's just personal with me. You find the things that work for you and use them. Page 288. Home-based reinforcement is where the teachers give students daily or weekly report cards that go home to the parents, and the parents either give them privileges or consequences for their behavior at school. Now, obviously, that would be a pretty serious situation, wouldn't it? But if the choice is either we help this child shape up or he doesn't get to stay in school, we probably ought to get the parents involved to help him shape up. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I'm thinking there's some parents that probably wouldn't want to go along with this program. I mean, I still remember way back in the years when we still did paddling in school. I called a mother and told her that what her son was doing and how he'd been habitual at it. She said, well, I don't know what to do about it. And I said, well, you might want to give him a paddling when he gets home. Oh, she goes, I just wouldn't have the heart to do that. I said, well, somebody probably needs to. She said, would you give him a paddling at school for me? And I thought, if she asked, why not? So I told him, I said, your mother and I had a talk, and we agreed. In fact, she asked me if I'd give you a paddling if you keep doing this. So I'm telling you that I'm going to watch you for the next 3 days, and if you do whatever you've been doing that got you in trouble, you're going to get a paddling. He said, my mother never said that. I said, yes, she did. And he kept misbehaving, and he got his swats. And guess what happened when he went home and complained to his mother about Mr. Bonine said, you told him to paddle me. Are you ready for this? Here were her exact words. I never told him that. That's how much this child was in control at the home where he lived. Mm. Is that a scary home situation? So I learned a hard lesson there. If the parents aren't willing to do it,
you better not be either.
You better not do it either, because they won't back you up. Isn't that sad that we live in that kind of a world?
So what happened?
Well, I didn't give you more paddlings.
Like, did you get a talking to from the superintendent or anything?
Nope. he just, because it was back on it when you still had the rules where
Right.
you could paddle. So I just said, I'm not gonna do that anymore because I don't have the parents' support. But I said, if this behavior keeps up, and I told his son, I said, okay, your mom backed down on what she said. I know what she said. She knows what she said. That's irrelevant. If we have any more of this, you're gonna be gone from this school. We're gonna kick you out of school. And I went to the superintendent and said, can we do that? And he said, yes, you can. Because if the home and the school aren't working together, hey, let them go someplace else to school. But I do believe in home-based reinforcers for kids who really need the help. 289, group contingency programs. An entire group is rewarded on the basis of the behavior of all the group members. We've already talked about that. I don't like using this for quizzes. The textbook gave the example of if everybody behaves, you won't have to take a quiz.
Yeah, I was thinking, I liked that.
I'm thinking quizzes are punishment?
Yeah.
No, I don't want that to be the perception in my room. Okay, page 290, behavior teams. So now so how am I going to team them up in class? Oh, that's easy. The boys and the girls. And who will always win? The girls will have the best behavior.
Good
And
try.
the boys will get in
I was
trouble.
thinking of the actual game.
And here's what a guy said. He said, you know, Mr. Bonine, why we always get in trouble and the girls don't? It's because that you're easier on the girls than you are. You expect more of us. I said, yeah, I probably do. He said, why is that? I said, I don't know. Probably because I have girls. I have 2 daughters. I don't have any boys to live with. And I just expect boys to be more grown up than girls. I make more allowances for behavior with them. It's just the way I am. And now that you know that, then just buckle up and get with the program. Just do what I expect. And say, well, that's not fair. And then I say it again. Life isn't fair. How many times have you been dealt an unfairness in life? That's just life, people. We have to learn how to cope with that. So I'm not so sure I want to use behavior teams. Page 293, enforce school attendance. How would you do that? Oh, we'll only have a party for the people who have not perfect attendance, but high attendance records. People who drop below a certain attendance level, we just don't let them go to the party. They stay in school and do schoolwork because they need a lot of catching up to do, while the rest of them get to go to Chuck E. Cheese and have a good time or something. Requesting family involvement. When you call a family, try to be positive about everything you say to them. Why am I calling? Because I want their help in having a better relationship with their child. I'm not sure why their child is doing something in my classroom. And what is that child doing? And I tell them, and I've talked to them and I've told them that I don't really want them behaving that way, but they don't seem to be hearing me. You understand? I'm going to use positive words. It's like, what? They're just not smart enough to follow the rules? No, don't be attacking things. Remember, this is their flesh and blood you're talking about. Be gentle, be tender with it. It's like, this is what I wanted to do, and I don't understand why they don't do it. Say, well, you know, we had a talk about that at the dinner table the other day, and even my husband said, I don't understand why Mr. Bonine's like that. And I'm going, well, that helps me understand your son a little better. You understand what it helps me understand? Now, they've had a discussion at home where the whole family thinks I'm kind of a nutcase, you know? So it's like, so is there anything that your husband does that bothers your son, but your husband says he just has to learn to live with it because that's the way I am? She goes, oh, yeah. Ah, that could be. Now, see, this to me is so strange. That could be part of what's going on. He's got a father who makes him toe the line in areas that don't make sense to him. And now he comes to school and I'm wanting him to toe the line in areas that don't make sense to him, and it's too much like his dad, and it's just more than he can handle. I get it at home, I get it at school. You follow what's going on? Now it's like it's starting to build up. But now see, be careful. Say, well, let's take the pressure off and just let him have a break from it. I'm going, wait a minute, look at the big picture. And the big picture to me is, what does God have in store for this young man? And what is God trying to do in this young man's life? And it could be that he's put him in both a home and a school that's frustrating him because God's trying to get him to come to grips with something that's going on in his life that frustrates God. So let God do his work in a person's life. And page 295, it says confronting bullying. I say just confront kids on misbehavior. And basically, so what does the Bible say about this? I don't know if the Bible says anything about pencil sharpening. No, but doesn't the Bible say to submit to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake? Now, if that applies to us with the speed limit, doesn't that apply to this little chipper when it comes to not sharpening pencils during class time? Because that pencil sharpener thing just bothers us. I have a rule. Now, granted, I don't have a lot of rules, but that's one of my rules. Don't sharpen pencils in my class. And here's a box that you can trade it out when it breaks. All right. That's chapter 11. We'll do chapter 12 on Monday. How many chapters do we have left in here?
There are 14 chapters altogether.
14 chapters. And chapter 13, I got a whole bunch of notes on. But I had a bunch of notes on chapter 11 too. So it looks like we kind of got through this stuff. Good. Oh, but we took 2 days. Yeah, that's right. You took 2 days, Tom. You better.
And we missed a day.
Yeah, that's what happened. We missed a day. Well, we'll get through the other 2. Here we are, chapter 11. We're done with that. We'll move up to chapter 12. Well, what happened with the...
Oh,